Welcome to the KTV YouTube channel. This is my Necromancer build. I'm a level 85 Necromancer. I have a combination of minions, shadow damage, and bone spear as the three main components in this build. My opinion is a very strong build. Later on in the video you'll see I clear a level 49 Nightmare dungeon. So, to get into this, the first thing I get is the hemorrhage in the first passive, just to be able to get to the second phase, the second tier. And in this tier we have Bone Spear, we have the Enhanced Bone Spear, and Paranormal Bone Spear. Also we have Hued Flesh. And then when we get to the third tier, we enter one of the main components outside of Bone Spear. It's the Corpse Explosion, Enhanced Corpse Explosion, and Blighted Corpse Explosion. We get 3 levels on our Skeletal Warrior Mastery. We get Grim Harvest maxed out and Fueled by Death maxed out. When we reach the 4th tier, we get Decrepify with Enhanced Decrepify and Horrid. I like Horrid over Abhorrent because I'm not using Corpse Tendrils for the vulnerability, or I'm not using any high cooldown skills. So the execute damage works really well with this. Over here we have Gruesome Mending and Transfusion. These are optional. You can go for these if you want. You don't have to go for these. You can invest more into Necrotic Carapace or into the Shadow skills if you'd like. But I just like these because it helps keep the minions alive a little bit easier. And on the 4th we have Golem Mastery. Oh, I'm sorry if I didn't go through. Skeletal Mage Mastery is maxed out also. And on the 4th one, we have Golem Mastery maxed out. We have all the minion passives maxed out. Inspiring Leader, Helvet Commander, Death's Defense, and Bonded in Essence. And our keystone is the Shadow Blight. Alright, to get into the Paragon board, keeping in mind that the main types of damage we have in this build are Shadow, Bone, and Minion damage. The first rune is the Control. That's the first glyph I have in this glyph socket. Works extremely well because I use cold mages and I have the blizzard aspect on my chest piece, as you'll see later on in the video. But with Decrepify, you proc the crowd control, your minions do more damage, you do more damage. And then for whoever doesn't know this, when you are doing your Paragon board, every board outside of your first board, right, has requirements for the rare nodes that increase per board that you put. So whatever you deem to be the most important should be your first board, and then your second board will have higher requirements to get the bonuses on the rare nodes, and your third board will have even higher requirements. So this would, your second and third and fourth board would have even higher requirements. So the first board, cheapest requirements, very easy, 170. Second board goes up, third board requirements go up to get the bonuses, and fourth board requirements go even higher. So to keep that in mind, you want to put the most important stuff earlier. So for this first board, I went with the Flesh Eater board. I also got Stifle here. This works really well with the Decrepify passive that I have, because I think 30% is when they have less than 30% life. Injured is when they have less than 30% life. And since I have that passive on Decrepify where they get executed when they reach 10%, this works out really well. When I get them to that 30% threshold, I do 50% increased damage to injured enemies, get them to that 10% a lot faster, and just start executing. The next rare node I have is Targeted. Especially in higher tier, I think doing any type of damage to elites is great. Any bonus damage to elites is great. 32% damage to elites, phenomenal. And on this glyph socket, I have Exploit. Since I have an aspect on Bone Spear that spreads your vulnerability, and I don't need that passive on Bone Spear, I have it on an aspect on my main weapon. This is a really good glyph. It not only increases the damage I do to them, it increases my damage as I do damage to them, which is amazing. And I have the Flesh Eater node itself, 40% increased damage for 6 seconds after consuming 5 corpses. You could have almost basically 100% uptime on this because you're consuming corpses nonstop. And then when we get to the third board, I have Wither here. And so the thing about this board, the most important part about this board, in my opinion, is getting Gnawing Darkness, Lingering Shadows, and the Glyph Socket. If you have enough points, you can go for Wither, you can add Dragon Shadows if you want, you can add Malediction if you want, but the most important things are these three, in my opinion, on this board so far. So, like, if you don't have enough and you don't even want to go for this legendary, you can start from a different gate and get these three and move on to the next board if you feel like it. But this synergizes well with the shadow damage I have, because most of the damage I have is shadow damage over time, and a lot of the stats I have on my gear increases the damage I do to enemies affected by shadow damage over time. So this synergizes really well with all that. In this rune we have Scourge, which I think is phenomenal. 45.9% shadow damage over time. You and your minions deal 10% increased damage to enemies affected by shadow damage over time. Kind of self-explanatory. It's an amazing glyph, especially for this build, because this is also a minion build. Over here I have Dragon Shadows. It's just some damage reduction, help you survive a little bit more. Lingering Shadows, increase shadow damage over time. It's great. And Gnawing Darkness, 20% damage to affected by shadow damage over time, and 60% damage to elites. Really, really good. I got Malediction here because I had the points and it was right here. You don't necessarily 100% need this, but it's a nice level 10% boost. And on the last board here, I went Cult Leader because, you know, hopefully with these upcoming, hopefully they do end up releasing Necromancer buffs and they do end up buffing minions to where they become more powerful. I wanted to invest in that. So this whole build is made with minions in mind. But since I realized that they have less requirements for the earlier boards, I put my Flesh Eater and my Wither earlier, because minion damage is just not that great overall in general compared to those two. Doesn't mean that they're completely useless in terms of damage. They still can do a lot of damage, in certain situations, but mostly they're not going to be doing as much damage as me. So I wanted to prioritize my damage and then build off into their damage afterwards. So in this board, I got the Custody and the Overlord. This is minion damage, this is minion damage reduction, and in the Glyph Socket I put Dead Razor, which increases the bonuses I get from these two, even the rare nodes, the magic nodes here, for the minion damage and damage reduction. And my plan here, and this is also good because, every time my minions attack something, I also am able to do increased damage to them. And then my plan here is to get the Infused Warrior, Puppeteer, and Infused Caster. So I think I can get this one, go in this direction, get this, go in this direction, get this, and I can either move on to my next board or decide if Cult Leader is a good legendary or not. But that's just my general setup right now that I have in terms of skills and Paragon board. Now, in terms of my minions, I have Reaper for the corpses, which is really good. I have Skeletal Mages, Cold Skeletal Mages here. Enemies are frozen by or damaged while frozen by Cold Mages. Primary attack are made vulnerable for 4 seconds, which is good. Which I really like. And then I have the Iron Golem. The reason I like the Iron Golem, I'll explain later on when I get into the itemization I have. So in terms of items, I have a helm that has the aspect of 2 more skeletal mages. Because minions are an integral part of this build, I think I would want as many minions as possible. I have 2 extra skeletal mages, 53 intelligence. I'm gonna just go over the important stats. Like, obviously poison resistance isn't that great, and plus 20 maximum essence isn't that phenomenal. But intelligence and plus 17 all stats is good. You could definitely get a better helm, but for right now, this is the best option I have. For my armor, and okay, so the important point here is you want to stack damage reduction. Whatever type of damage reduction you can get to close enemies, or shadow affected by shadow damage over time, or flat damage reduction, you want to stack that, especially on your armor pieces. So as in my chest piece, I have damage reduction, I have damage reduction to close, and damage reduction to shadow damage over time. For the imprint, I have the Blizzard for my skeletal mages. This is the only unique you would really, really absolutely need. It's really good because as I go further into explaining the itemization, being able to have your corpse explosion occur right underneath whatever enemy, ranged, far, like if they're positioned far, if they're attacking you from range, if they move, being able to constantly keep the miasma from corpse explosion underneath them is very beneficial. For my pants here, I have the barrier, 62 have intelligence, damage reduction to close, plus 18 all stats. This I think is pretty good, right? Yet again, I'm stacking the damage reduction. Necromancer is just a squishy class in general. Now, the reason I have barrier on this is mostly because this build is kind of like ramping damage. The longer the fight goes on, the more damage you're gonna do. And I'll try to show you later on. When all my buffs are maxed out, I actually get 42,000 attack power, which is, in my opinion, more than enough than you would need, really. 42,000 is an absurd amount of attack power, but you have to have all your buffs active. Now, it's not difficult to get the buffs active. It can actually happen relatively fast, especially when you have corpses that you can use to constantly proc the Shadow Blight passives and the Flesh Eater and all that. And on my boots, this is important. You need movement speed, I think, is extremely important. And the all stats intelligence, it's okay. And the damage reduction while injured is also good, but I could go for more damage reduction stats on the boots here. Now for the weapon, I think the three important stats you should definitely look for are vulnerable damage, damage to affected by shadow damage over time, and critical damage with bone skills. Since I am using my bone spear to spread vulnerability to all the enemies, it doesn't hurt to lean into it a little bit and make it as strong as I can make it without sacrificing my shadow damage or my minions. And this is a great way to do that. And this is the aspect I was talking about. Bone Spear's primary attack makes enemies hit beyond the first vulnerable for 5 seconds, and the splinters do 225% bonus damage to the vulnerable enemies, on top of the exploit, which is almost 20% more damage. On top of me doing damage to them, increasing my own damage. So it's like really, really good. The necklace, I have intelligence. This is not the best necklace, but it's not bad either. Intelligence, damage, essence cost reduction. I could do without the blood skill damage, but that's okay. For the passive here, this is a very important passive. You need the Shadow Blight key passive, damages enemies 10 times. You think 10 times is a lot, but when you're popping all these corpses, you stack to 10 super fast. And when you stack to 10 super fast, your damage just starts skyrocketing. This is very important. For the second ring, I have each time the Shadow Blight key passive deals damage to enemies, it increases the next Shadow Blight damage within 10 seconds by 32%. This is kind of like playing into the whole popping corpses, getting as many popped corpses as you can. Now my Shadow Blight is ramping up in damage, and also my damage is ramping up. So like it's all like working together. And on the last piece of gear I have a ring. Oh, sorry, to go over the stats real quick. Critical chance, damage, 18% damage to affected by shadow damage over time. Maximum life, I chose maximum life because I did need a little bit more survivability. Just to like reiterate here, this isn't a build where you're gonna like never die. Okay, this isn't like a build where it's the blood mist bone build. You're just running into a group of mobs, popping blood mist, hitting bone storm, and just going to town. This is more of a build where you're synergizing with your minions and using your minions as your front line, and you're casting your skills from behind. And it feels like a much more like a necromancer to me, and that's why I really like this build. I have as many minions as I possibly can out there. They're doing the best that they can do out there. They're providing help. They're an integral part to the build, and they're my front line. So it's like as much of a necromancer as I can get that's still viable at higher tier stuff. And over here I have shadow damage, damage to affected by shadow damage over time. So like, I'm proccing all of this shadow damage, it's affecting all these enemies, it's increasing the damage that they're taking from me and my minions, which is great. Critical strike damage, critical strike chance, and damage to slowed, which works well. And the reason I have this keystone passive, which is the ramping attack speed, is because it gets me more corpses. It gets my golem to the 5th auto attack where he does a AoE more often. It gets my mages getting their chill and freeze activated a lot faster. Like this is a good aspect when you want to include your minions in there. So to get, well, that's basically the general overview on what the build is like. I will show you a clip of me clearing a level 48 Nightmare Dungeon. right after this. But I just want to reiterate, like if you're looking for a build that's like, oh, infinite survivability, I wouldn't say this is the build for you. But if you're looking for a build where you do tremendous amounts of damage, ramping damage, and you have good use of your minions, I think this is a great build for you. This is still definitely viable on higher tier. I'm about to do a Nightmare Dungeon with like level 101 mobs, I think, and I'm level 85. And yeah, I think I die like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 times in there, but you'll see the damage I do, and they're severely outlevel me. So um, as I continue with this build, I definitely think it can get stronger. There's definitely some stuff I can make a little bit better, especially with my minions. Once I have enough Paragon points, I invest in those different nodes for my minions. I think this build will get stronger. In a couple of aspects that, like as you can see over here, it's not the best roll. I can change these, and the build will definitely be stronger. But right now, as a level 85 Necromancer, I can do level 48, 49 Nightmare Dungeons, and I think that's really good, especially since I'm using a lot of my minions in it. Well, thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and follow and subscribe. Thank you. Like with this playstyle, like it's very doable. But like I don't want people to think, oh, you're just gonna be able to do it. It's very playstyle. As you can see, Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you give the build a try. If you have any questions, I stream on Kick almost every single day from 2 to 12 p.m. Eastern, sometimes even longer. You guys come by, give me a check out. If you have any questions on the build, I'm more than willing and happy to answer. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a great day.